Dạ bẩm có thảo dân. Giao dịch.
Oh, hey. Didn't see you there. It's just out here building my civilization. You know, there's no feeling quite like starting a brand new session of an RTS. Collecting resources, gathering food, building your buildings, exploring the map. I always wondered, what if you could capture that feeling in a board game? And that's what I set out to do. So let's get into it. So let's talk about some of my inspirations and goals going into this board game design. Obviously, this has been inspired by me playing several real-time strategy games. And so from the RTS side, some of my important inspirations include having a build queue or a build timer, essentially. You know, in most board games, you spend resources and then the thing is built immediately and you get the benefits or points. But in an RTS, it doesn't work that way. You have to dedicate workers to building the thing, and that takes time. Depending on how many workers you have, you know, then you get the benefits once it's complete. The other thing is I wanted to add events and time challenges. What that came from is playing Timberborn. You know, you've got the droughts where you have to build up water and storage of food and stuff so that you can survive these drought periods. Number 3 was automated resource tracking, right? Rather than having multiple steps where you play something and you gather these little bits or pieces, I wanted that to be all one piece, you know, and you'll see what that means in a few minutes. 4th, of course, any good multiplayer RTS has some kind of competition, whether it's military or resources, land, influence, and so I wanted to have that be included in the board game, of course. And number 5, sort of the foundation of RTS in my mind is worker management, right? Whether, you know, you have to manage your units and your workers, telling them what to do, how to spend their time. You can upgrade them, get new technologies, whatever it might be. From the board game side, some of my goals of things to implement. First, I wanted the foundation of the game to be a bag builder. So for those that aren't familiar, a bag builder means you have a bag of tokens and you make strategic choices about what tokens to add and sometimes what tokens to take away. And then on your turn, you're randomly drawing tokens for benefits. And usually there's some kind of push your luck kind of thing with drawing too many or whatever it might be. And so I wanted that to be at the center of my game because I thought it fit the theme, and we'll see why in a minute, and also thought it'd be an interesting challenge. Number 2, I wanted the competition aspect to be area control, which means you have a map and you have units or other things on the map that give you influence in an area, and whoever has the highest influence or power gets the benefits of that zone. And number 3, I wanted to have objectives rather than points. You know, a lot of these big strategy games, they have what we call point salad, which means you've got 1,000 little different ways to get points, whether it's getting these cards, upgrading these things, buying these units, building these buildings. And, you know, it's a fine thing, but I wanted to make sure that, you know, we have specific pointed objectives that players are competing for, and that they allow for various different strategies and focuses to thrive within the game. So these are the kind of things I'll be working on implementing in the game. I've got a base prototype that has some of them I'm going to show you right now. Alright, so let's buckle down and actually take a look at the early prototype I've created for the game. As you know, every RTS you start off with a little cluster of workers, maybe a building or two, and that's your starting point. And so that's what we got right here. Each of these tokens that looks like a little person silhouette represents a worker. The color represents a specialty that they have, and the number represents their strength. And then we've got a couple other tokens down here that have some other functions in the game. And basically all of this goes into a draw bag, like I was talking about earlier, the bag builder, and we move over to our player board, which is where we assign workers tasks. Now I'm hoping in the future that this player board will look a little bit more thematic and not just like a grid of of colors. But for now, it's the bare bones, utilitarian thing that we need. So you might notice some of these colors match some of the colors of the workers that we had earlier. So basically on your turn, you start taking tokens out of this bag. Red ones are bad. They represent exhaustion of your workers. So basically, if you've drawn too many of these, you've worked your workers too hard, and you lose some of the benefits of your turn. But if we draw out an actual worker, that means we get to place it somewhere on this board, assigning it to a task for that turn. This one matches food, that's its specialty, and when you see a lot of these say match, that means you get an extra bonus if the worker matches that particular spot, and you also get an additional resource. So let's say we chose to play this on food. Its strength is 1, so we get 1 plus 1 for matching, and then we get the opportunity to do this ability, which means once we can spend 1 food to increase any other resource by 1. So we drop it down, we can increase military power, money, materials, whatever. But let's just keep it on food. And that is how we gain resources as the game progresses. So, you basically keep drawing, adding resources to your board, deciding where you want to play your units. So there's a few different things to consider in addition to resources. Over here is your builders. You assign workers permanently to be builders, and this number, as you go up this scale, you achieve these numbers, and this number is how far you're able to advance the build queue. So basically how quickly you're able to build buildings. And you assign them, like I said, you assign them permanently, so it's a bit of a strategic choice. So let's say I put one here, and hopefully, we got an exhaustion, so we're one. Basically, if you draw both your exhaustion tokens, then you actually lose your ability to advance the build queue that turn. So let's play that there. Okay, now we've gotten 2 builders, and each turn, at the end of each turn, we can advance the build queue by 1. And down here we've got some other things. Basically, we got this. If you've got nowhere else to play your workers, you can play them here, and you can add 1 to the associated resource. So basically, if I played a gray one here, I could add 1, no matter what strength or specialty this worker has, or what other upgrades I might have. It's just like a last resort if you've run out of spots, and there will be a limit. I haven't exactly defined that yet. And over here, this is what allows you to add projects to the build queue. So if we come up here, we've got the very beginnings, the very prototypes of some of the buildings and upgrades that we can get. So we've got like quarry, granary, defensive structures, aqueduct, mostly things that help you get resources at this point. And these numbers at the top represent how many turns it takes to build them, so essentially where you'll place them in the build queue, as well as the resources they require. So this one costs 3 wood, 3 money, so you pay that up front, and then, like, let's say I built this one, it has a 1, so I'd put it here on the 1, and then when I advance the queue once, this would be completed. And this one, it's a little bit off color, but it's supposed to be associated with this track here. So now, see, normally materials would provide wood. Now this, materials track can also pay for stone costs. And you can see on some of these buildings, there's stone, and I think eventually I might also add iron. It just depends on how things shake out. Some of the other benefits you might get is other benefits for matching, other abilities you can implement when you assign workers to that task, etc., etc. And then lastly, we have the map. and right now it's in a very basic state. Basically, there's just a few different zones. Each zone has a value and a color. Right now the colors don't really mean anything, but I'm hoping in the future that zones will be able to have different advantages, like maybe a resource collection or things like that. And then you've got these little pieces. These pieces represent buildings. So I have 2 on the map, even though I don't really have 2 buildings, but basically each time you build a project, you get to add a building to the board. And then the cubes represent soldiers. And both of these things increase your influence in a specific area. So as you move your soldiers around and build buildings, you get to claim new areas. And then if you come into contact with another player, you have a battle, or you can have a battle, and basically whoever has the highest power in that area wins the battle. And power is determined down here by your military power, as well as any other modifiers that might exist in the game. And that's really about it right now. You collect resources, build stuff, implement abilities, work on the map. Very soon I'm going to add in those objectives that give you something to work towards. It might be things like how many buildings you have, how many tokens, workers you have, the amount of money, things like that. Some of the challenges I had in creating this was like figuring out the push your luck mechanism with these exhaustion tokens, because you want people to be motivated to push their luck, but you also want it to be pretty significant punishment when they get to that point of drawing both their exhaustion. Otherwise, everyone would just keep drawing and drawing because you just get more resources and more actions and things. So right now the benefit or the cost, if you end up drawing both your exhaustion tokens, is that you're not able to advance your build queue on that turn. Basically your workers are exhausted and they've already gathered all these resources and they're too tired to build anything. That's kind of the thematic element there. And still tinkering with some things, but eventually there's going to be a cost when you draw a single exhaustion token as well. In the future, got a few things written down here. Some of the things I'm going to be implementing in the next few episodes are the objective cards, those events that I talked about, and I'm thinking of doing kind of like having events sort of be like not a bidding mechanism, but basically some of the events would give players a chance to compete for advantages. So they basically assign workers to deal with that event, whatever it might be, and whoever committed the most resources to that would take home some advantage. Of course, I want to add more buildings. I want to eventually make things a bit more pretty, both functionally and artistically. I'm thinking about making the board a bit more modular so that it's a little bit different every time. Maybe use tiles, and I've got some other ideas that will just add strategy to the game. But right now, this is where we're at. Before we end it, I just want to open up the comments. If you've got suggestions for the game, but also specifically for the theme, obviously, civ building in this sort of like vaguely medieval scenario has been done to death, both in board games and in video games. So I've been trying to think of something a bit more creative and unique. So leave your suggestions down in the comments, leave your feedback, and subscribe to see more updates on the game and see how it evolves over time, because I'm really excited about it. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.